Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the Upwork Enterprise webinar today. My name is Eric Gilpin. I lead our enterprise business here at Upwork. A real quick intro to Upwork. Many of you may be familiar with two of the world's leading freelance marketplaces that came together, one called Elance, one called Odesk, came together in 2014 and rebranded as Upwork in 2015 to build the world's largest freelancing marketplace. And so a little bit about me. Prior to joining Upwork, I spent 15 years in the human capital space with another leading HR technology company. And over the last 20 years, I've seen major shifts in how companies not only look for talent, but essentially how talent is now working with companies. And so our goal today is to explore some of those demographic changes and shifts that we've seen in the world of work. We'll talk at a high level some of the trends that we're seeing within our marketplace today from enterprise organizations that are leveraging Upwork as their on-demand digital talent solution. We also have two guest speakers today. One, Eric Gregg, is the CEO of Innovero, which is our research partner that helped us publish our second study called the Future Workforce Report. And Eric will do a deep dive into some of the macro trends that we're seeing at the business level of how people are embracing both the rise of the independent contractor and tools around remote work. And then I'm super excited to share that we've got Brad, who's actually one of our top-rated freelancers that's on the platform today. That we'll talk a little bit more about Brad's experience with Upwork, how he engages with companies, some of the interesting projects that he's working on today, and also be able to get some feedback of how we can continue to build relationships with top-rated experts like Brad in the marketplace. And so a couple things to remember as a part of this today is we are going to have questions or Q&A at the end, and so you'll see there's a question section in the GoToWebinar panel where you can type and submit questions that you'll have. And what we'll do is, as those arise, if you go ahead and put those in there, we'll make sure and go through and highlight some of those to answer at the end. We also are going to record this webinar, and so if folks that or colleagues you may have that weren't able to attend, this will be available via recording that you'll be able to share, both internally as well as just to go back and review. And so thank you again for your time, and hopefully you find this valuable and make sure that we're becoming a resource for you guys as you use platforms like Upwork. And so at a high level agenda, just a quick business update. As I mentioned, our partner, Eric Gregg, is the CEO of Innovero. We'll talk about the quarterly skills index. We have over 12 million freelancers on our platform, over 5 million customers that use our platform every year. And what happens is we see really surges and peaks of demand as new technologies emerge in the marketplace. And so we'll highlight some of those as you're thinking about potential projects that you could use on-demand solutions for. And so if you think about 2018 and the progress that Upwork has made within large companies, it's been quite significant. In fact, we look at that as this is really the tipping point around adoption for large organizations that are using Upwork as their on-demand solution. In fact, cumulatively, we've achieved over $4 million in for what we call freelancer earnings, meaning money that is paid to the freelancers for the work that's performed. And companies are really starting to rethink their hiring strategy, understanding that there's significant challenges in the kind of current work model, specifically around the skills gap. And so if you think about trying to find the right person with the right skills, at the right price and the right place, it's incredibly difficult. There's over 7 million open jobs in the United States. Unemployment is at a 17-year low, and especially places in large rural markets, it's incredibly hard. In fact, I think unemployment, for people with a 4-year professional degree is actually 2%. And so if you're always trying to solve for every equation or every variable in that equation, you run into the skills gap. What's interesting, though, is that if you think about the right person with the right skills at the right price, but you don't necessarily need them to come on site, I would argue there is no skills gap, meaning we can always find people that have in-demand specific skills that are obviously important to your organization. The trade-off is that work might happen outside of your four walls. And so with the rise of the independent contractor that wants more flexibility in their life, they want more choice, they want access to new skills, along with the rise of the kind of technology, cloud computing, and other types of skills that we'll talk about later, we've seen massive adoption from companies in the Fortune 1000 space and how they're leveraging Upwork to get work done. And it's really building new capabilities for the organization, getting them access to not only new talent, but faster than ever before. The average time to fill on our platform today, meaning from project start times, are less than 3 days, when you're seeing traditional models that are almost over a month, close to 60 days, depending on the skill. And then by accessing a global talent pool, one that could be in your backyard or on the other side of the world, you're just getting access to more skills than you're ever going to see. And there's also massive potential cost savings as you're looking for people, removing some of that supply demand in market equation challenges that we have. And so it's been a really exciting year for Upwork this year. Watching large organizations continue to use our platform. In fact, 28% of the Fortune 500 have leveraged Upwork as a part of their on-demand talent strategy. And so while we grew up in the small and medium-sized marketplace, meaning where we have companies with 50 to 100 employees, over the last 2 to 3 years, this has been our fastest growing segment in this space. Larger companies that want access to those in-demand skills, that want to think about work differently, that want to build new capabilities. In fact, if you look at just the size of volume of projects that were posted from our enterprise customers, we had over 30,000 projects posted on our platform in 2017 from some of the world's largest, most engaging and exciting brands. Obviously, you've got new digital companies like Dropbox and Airbnb, but also very large multinational brands like GE and Samsung that are also leveraging Upwork as a part of their strategy. In fact, Samsung has been able to achieve 6 times faster onboarding times than their traditional methods, leveraging Upwork as a part of their talent strategy. And so this market is really starting to scale within the enterprises, which is one of the reasons we want to get together today and highlight some opportunities as you're thinking about how work could be done differently. So one of the things, having a very high liquidity marketplace is we can measure kind of what's going on. And so what I wanted to share for the folks that are attending the call today is just what are the top 10 use cases that we see from large enterprise organizations every single day on Upwork. And if you think about our platform specifically, while there's a lot of people that are in the on-demand economy, we're kind of a horizontal player that focuses on knowledge work. And so think professional services, but also think things that can be done remotely. 99% of our solutions for our customers are done not necessarily on site. And so some of these make obviously complete sense as a part of our strategy. But if you look at what we're doing today with customers, we're going to see a lot of things within technology. And so these could be things from software to web development to mobile development, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But we've seen massive triple-digit growth in these categories year over year from our enterprise customers. As you can imagine, as you're building technology solutions, access to creative and digital type talents are important as well. So things around video production, graphic design. Think about the rise of social media as a new way for us to communicate as brands, and having access to these digital marketing experts that can build content as well as distribution and the new way of advertising are super important. Upwork has freelancers in 180 different countries. And so think about consumer product companies or digital brands that need to translate their story for their consumers. And so that could be software that needs to be translated, that could be content or documents that need to be translated. And having freelancers in 180 countries, that becomes a really big use case for large companies to help them solve language opportunities or localization opportunities at scale. As well as one of the biggest things that we've seen around remote work is things around network support, customer service, call center type work, where people are able to manage these things via virtual desktop solutions, and they can do customer interactions via their home. And it allows you to build a really customer-centric model, not only around language, but also around time zones, and so that you can actually build a very customer-centric solution without having the hard costs of building physical locations. As well as the rise of big data, information has to flow from system to system. And so one of the examples I use a lot is within the applicant tracking space. And so if you're upgrading your applicant tracking system, you need to be able to move your information from your previous ATS to your new ATS. And working with a freelance solution to help you migrate that information, to help you normalize that process, allows you to adopt new software technologies as well as new solutions even faster. And so while there's over 5 1,000 different skills that are performed on Upwork across 100 different categories. These are the top 10 that we see within the Fortune 1000 every single month. And as I mentioned, these are growing significantly year over year. One that didn't make the top 10, but that is really growing quickly, is this idea around data science. And so as companies are amassing large amounts of information about their customers and their businesses, you've seen like huge increases in tools like the Microsoft Power BI or tools like Domo or skills around Tableau and how you're building visualization tools to help you understand your information. Those experts are on our marketplace as well, and they're helping companies really, not necessarily mine big data, but provide big answers and insights of what they're trying to do. And so I want to give you a little bit of a kind of insight of what's going on before I introduce our guest speaker. And so more to come on trends here in a bit. And so one of the great things about being a leader in the space is also providing thought leadership around what's going on in the world of work, not just on Upwork, but just in professional businesses around the world. And so in 2018, we launched our second version of what we call the Future Workforce Report, and we've done this in partnership with a third-party leading research firm named Innovero. It's headquartered in Portland, that has significant experience in helping companies, professional service organizations get access to third-party information that helps provide insight and thought leadership to potential players in the space about what's going on, and so you can get kind of an unbiased third-party view of how companies, specifically large enterprises, are embracing the future of work. So please join me in welcoming our partner Eric Gregg, who's the CEO and founder of Innovero, to talk a little bit about this year's report.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you everybody for joining the webinar today. I'm thrilled to be able to share a little bit of the data behind this year's research study. It's the second year that we've done it, as Eric mentioned, and I think that there's a lot of great information in that study for the people on the phone call today to really understand where are we in the state of utilizing flexible and remote workforce, and what's really driving some of the key changes in behavior, in thoughts, and then also how the large enterprise organizations are adopting these and rolling these out. You'll continue to see more information being rolled out from us and from Upwork related to this study as we go into more detail. But if we jump to that first slide, I could start talking about the key things that we found. And this is kind of a little bit of a backdrop on the state of hiring as it sits today. Now, keep in mind that this study included over 1,000 hiring managers and decision makers from all sizes of organizations, but with a heavy distribution within the enterprise side of things. And what you see here is a very consistent message to what we've seen the last few years, which is that hiring is hard. It's expected to get harder. And ultimately, what we have is a real challenge for people to meet their business objectives with the talent pools that they have available today in the time frame that they need to. The majority of these projects that are being taken on by freelancers or remote workers are projects that wouldn't get done otherwise, that would lead to burnout internally, or that would lead to significant postponement in the dates here. Right now, as we look at this out externally, the latest jobs report showed unemployment rate is 4.4%, but that doesn't even really tell the full story. There's actually 10 states in the U.S. alone that have under 3% unemployment rate. There's sectors such as IT where it's significantly lower. You saw the job skills that Eric laid out in the most common use cases. Technology is driving a lot of this forward as a part of that. One thing that really was amazing is literally everybody has open positions. 91% of the people that were surveyed actually have open positions. You can see the average days open is significantly higher when you look at engineering and accounting, finance. And they're 3 times as likely to say that it's gotten harder in 2017 as opposed to having gotten easier. What's interesting, though, is that perception of how you view the world and how you view how difficult it is to hire has a lot to do from the study with how you view what your available applicant pool is. What we found is that those that were utilizing freelancers were about half as likely to say that it was significantly harder as those that were not. And so we're able to see some opportunities to lessen that stress of trying to fill some of those open positions or having skills that your existing team isn't necessarily able to meet. So now the question becomes, what is the next step? So if you look on that next slide, what we see is we're really in the age of what I would consider to be the nimble organization, and that is to say that technology and the pace of change and how we run our businesses and the opportunities and projects that our businesses are working on is changing faster than the skills of our existing workforce can to keep up with that. So we're seeing a tremendous amount of specialization. Eric hit it a little bit on his lead into this, where people are trying to focus in on the skills that they need at the time that they need them. It doesn't necessarily make sense to have somebody who is a specialist in a very specific skill set on your organization for the entire year, but it absolutely makes sense to have their expertise for a project or for a couple of projects as a part of that. When we look at the data, we find that roughly 60% believe the skills have gotten more specialized compared to 3 years ago, and that same percentage actually expects them to get even more specialized in the next 10 years as a part of that. We know that workers need to learn new skills to stay marketable. The challenge is, again, how do we get those skills when we need them as a part of that? So investing in growing the skills of the internal team really rests side by side with bringing in experts and specialists to be able to not only achieve the goals of the particular project or the particular team, but also to be able to actually upskill your existing team with those that are truly expert in the space. So there's a real opportunity there to view this as not just a means to bring forth that next project, but also an opportunity to bring along the skill set of the team that you already have in place and make sure that they're set to be successful in an ongoing manner. So that brings us to what I view is the one of the fundamental things here that we need to understand, which is that we are seeing evolution happen, and a lot of the reason why evolution is happening is because we are facing a situation where the way that we have handled talent in the past is no longer working. And this goes beyond freelancing into the remote workspace as well. It's amazing when you start to look at the significant percentage of people who are working with at least one team member primarily remotely. We found in the study that 63% of departments have someone working a significant amount of the time remotely. That is separate of whether or not they're a freelancer or a traditionally employed individual at that organization within that department. So what we see is that from the other studies that Upwork's brought out and others is that increasingly people are demanding and wanting flexibility in their life. They're wanting to approach their work as a series of gigs or projects as a part of that. And so as we look at how organizations are evolving, a lot of that evolution is being driven from the internal staff and the demands of hiring and retaining people internally, as well as the demands that are related to the evolving needs and how to handle that with specifically skilled freelancers as a part of that. It turns out really what we're seeing is that necessity is the mother of flexibility, not the mother of invention, the mother of flexibility. And that's really what the study showed over and over again this year. And we see it's only increasing. 48% of hiring managers are currently utilizing freelancers. That's up significantly, almost 50% compared to last year. And we're seeing that change as a part of that. One thing that's really interesting is that hiring managers are changing faster than their policies are changing to support them as a part of that. One of the biggest barriers to effectively getting the most out of your freelancer program or a remote worker program is having the policies, having the technology, and having the investment made to really support those individuals in a way to alleviate some of the potential pain points around them being a part of the team and being able to engage at the same level as somebody that would be within the office there as a part of that. And we at Innovero actually face this a little bit as well. We have a software component that has about 7 software developers, and our lead engineer and our CTO both were hesitant about utilizing somebody that wasn't in Portland, Oregon as a part of that. And so we kind of talked, and ultimately I said, look guys, we've got a problem no matter which direction we go. If we stay and say they have to be in Portland, Oregon. The problem is we can't find that talent here. We cannot get the talent that we need in the time frame to be able to do this project. On the flip side, if we go and we hire somebody remotely, which we actually did through Upwork, utilizing Yevgeny, and if we do that, we trade. Yeah, we have some challenges around how do we communicate with him effectively, how do we bring him into the team working remotely. But that is at least a challenge that we can overcome, whereas the other one is a limiting challenge that doesn't allow us to move forward with that. So, and I think that I tell that story because the data really suggests that what Innovero experienced there is really similar to what a lot of hiring managers are doing. And the funny thing about it is that there is a dramatic difference in how people perceive the effectiveness, the quality, the input that freelancers have based on their experience working with freelancers. So oftentimes the perceptions, the negative perceptions about freelancers are really kind of outdated, right? They're viewed on a specific example or history of working with a freelancer or remote worker, years ago as a part of that. Those that have had recent experiences rate their freelancers significantly higher in terms of quality, in terms of productivity, in terms of the skill set that they have. In fact, there was no statistically significant difference between how they rated their freelancers and their most recent full-time hire as a part of that. And a lot of that has to do with the ability to really micro-target a skill set that you need for a particular project, as opposed to having to maybe give a little bit on a primary skill set to get somebody that can be successful in the broader work of that team. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us in a spot where we're looking forward. And what is the future workforce? What does the future workforce look like? And we can see on this last slide of the data here that we've really just hit the tip of the iceberg. We're seeing people fundamentally believing that offices will become less of a critical component of the work environment. In fact, if you ask people now and you ask them what are the most important things to somebody having success at your organization, things like skill, work ethic, ability to work on a team, truly dwarf many of the other things that we kind of look at in terms of location-based aspects of that job. We see that 6 times as many hiring managers believe that these dynamic team structures will be the norm. I've actually seen people talk about it as sort of changing into a similar mode as to how actors, actresses, and people get together on the shooting of a movie as a part of that, right? You bring teams together for a particular project for a limited amount of time to really achieve something, and you're able to bring the best available talent to bear for that particular challenge at hand and to be able to move that forward. And that's really what the data suggests we're moving to. And the interesting thing, as I said today, it's already happening. The challenge is we have to see as organizations, are we going to allow it to happen based on sort of a reactive needs-based mode where things are happening because a particular project has to get done, or are we going to be proactive and really look at this and say, okay, what does it take to be successful if we're going to have remote workers? What does it take to be successful if we're going to engage flexible talent as more than just a fill-in role, but really strategically engage flexible talent? And if you look at it in that mode, what we see are those are the firms that are most satisfied with what they're getting from that flexible talent pool. So, Eric, I appreciate you giving me the introduction on this. I love to be able to talk about this with this group, and we look forward to sharing more information as it becomes available.
Thank you, Eric. That was excellent. It was a great overview of our future workforce report and some key trends that we're seeing, obviously, within the enterprise organizations. And I think it really tees up our next, part of the webinar really greatly, understanding that the rate in which skills will continue to increase is really unprecedented. In fact, I read somewhere recently that we're basically graduating students for jobs that won't exist in 5 years from now, and companies that want to continue to build value and grow their organizations, having access to the most in-demand and unique skills as they continue to evolve is really a significant differentiator for organizations. And so what I wanted to do, in addition to just talk about broad categories of work, I want to give you a highlight of what are the most in-demand specific skills that we're seeing on our marketplace. And as I mentioned, we've got over 12 million freelancers, 12,000 new ones that join every single day. On average, there's 3 million projects posted every single year, and so we see real time what the most unique in-demand skills are. And so every quarter we put out what we call the quarterly skills index, and this basically looks at all the data that's sourced from our marketplace, and then we index it over year over year, and we basically look at, well, who are the fastest growing skills on our platform this time versus same time last year. And since Upwork is a closed loop system where you can hire, collaborate, and pay all in one place, and so we actually can see the earnings that continue to increase within these skills. And so all the ones that I'm going to mention today have all experienced more than 120% growth year over year. The top 10 have grown over 300% year over year, and some of these obviously are very timely. And so on the next slide, these are the top 20 skills that we saw on our platform in 2017. And the first one that jumps out, obviously Bitcoin, which actually makes a lot of sense if you think about the rise of cryptocurrencies and all of the information and noise that's been created around this new market. Companies are desperately trying to figure out, how does cryptocurrency fit into their customer strategy, their business strategy. I mean, they need to learn about it, and the best way to learn about it is to go partner with an expert that can kind of catch you up. And we see that as a high in-demand skill that just shows the real-time nature of our marketplace. And then the list obviously really breaks down, but you'll notice that some of the most in-demand things are around these new technologies that are available with the rise of obviously technology, the internet, cloud computing, as well as some double clicks around some new technologies, as well as augmented reality, which we'll talk about. And so if I want to do a deep dive in two of these areas, the first one I want to talk about is on the development side. So as I mentioned, enterprises use Upwork today. One of our biggest categories is around software development. But if you actually look into what are those unique skills that are in demand for these companies, you'll notice that a few of them continue to jump out, which make complete sense. If you think about things around Shopify development, as companies continue to digitize their business model and continue to find more e-commerce ways to serve their customers, building more e-commerce like experiences for people to procure goods and services from your organization is becoming increasingly important, especially with the rise of Amazon and other large commercial retailers that really have grown up digital. Companies are continuing to invest in their e-commerce strategies, so we see skills like Shopify continue to increase at rapid rates. Another one that I would highlight would be Swift development. And so the internet is now in our pocket. And in fact, the latest iPhone or Android device has more computing power than the first mainframe computer. And so if you think about it, things like Swift, which is a specific iOS skill, as people continue to embrace smartphone usage both within iOS and Android, Swift is a great example of how developers are trying to continue to evolve their skills to keep up with the rate of change and the new technology that we see within computer or consumer products around technology. The second one I'll dive in on was on the marketing skills that were available on that list. And so very similarly, as we see like continued change in how enterprises do business, the skills continue to evolve. And so a lot of these jumped out. One around influencer marketing. And so if you think about it, how companies target and communicate with customers has really changed over the last 10 years with the rise of the internet, the rise of content syndication platforms, the rise of things like social media. And in order to compete and continue to tell your story, you're just going to need different types of skills that are able to leverage these new types of platforms like Facebook, like Twitter, like LinkedIn, that can help you maximize your social media strategy as a part of telling your story. We've also found that as the technology increases, the way that you buy things changes as well. And so when you might have traditionally worked with a large ad agency like an Omnicom or a Saatchi & Saatchi or a WPP to help you kind of tell your story, those aren't necessarily the best ways to get to market today. Sometimes just partnering with someone that has media buying skills in these two technologies on a platform like Upwork allows you to scale and try and be agile in your approach as you continue to figure out your long-term strategy. So we see a lot of this, not only buying, but media production work that happens on our platform, including video editing. And so, that is probably one of the, largest use cases that we see from large enterprises at scale, where they're used to using design studios or large ad agencies around video production as well as editing. And they're able to find those skills real time on the marketplace and literally, sometimes at a 200% cost savings, as well as getting the work done significantly faster than going through, different types of third-party type solutions. And so marketing is another really big use case, specific within, influencer marketing, your SEO strategy, as well as like how you just produce, content in a digital way for your customers. The last one that I'll highlight, which I think really tees up our conversation with Brad, who's one of our top-rated freelancers, is around this idea of artificial intelligence and more specifically augmented reality. And kind of like 3 or 4 years ago, like the big topic of conversation was always around big data, access to information. I heard many times data was the new oil, but I haven't been to a conference or I haven't read anything in the last 90 days that didn't have some sort of AI spin or the future of work and how the computer industry is going to destroy jobs, or the fact that location doesn't matter, and things like augmented reality and virtual reality type solutions are becoming the new norm of how companies are obviously leveraging not only information but technology to really close some of these skill shortages or some of these opportunity gaps as a part of it. And so with that being said, I wanted to give a little bit more detail on some of the unique skills that we see on the platform, but I'd really like to introduce Brad Martin. Brad Martin is one of our top-rated freelancers on our platform today. Brad's got specific skills within augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D visualization. He's actually in St. Louis, Missouri. He's got expert knowledge in AutoCAD, SketchUp, Photoshop, a number of unique in-demand skills. And I thought as companies are embracing, the future of work and kind of these new talent models, what better way to kind of have this discussion, but to talk to Brad and talk about why he likes working this way, why he likes platforms like Upwork, maybe some of the challenges Brad has and what we as organizations can do to build better experiences. But we're committed to providing opportunities at scale, and our freelancer solution and success is a big part of that. So please join me in welcome Brad Martin to the call. Brad, it would be great to say hello and give a little bit of overview of maybe some things I left out there on your background.
Yeah, I can do that. Hello to everybody, and thanks to Innovero for the interesting data. That was really good to hear. And so, yeah, just give a little bit of background about myself. I started in architecture and design. So I worked for a firm for a few years, and kind of throughout working for these different architecture firms, and also through my undergrad, I was always pursuing kind of technology and how do you portray architecture and design to your client in the best way so that they understand kind of what the architect has in his drawings, and so that's kind of translated a lot. So throughout that pursuit, I started studying technology a lot. Virtual reality and augmented reality kind of came into play again a few years ago with better technology. And so I kind of dove into that, and when I saw its capabilities, I knew that was something that I really wanted to pursue as a full-time, but I didn't really know how to do that. So I reached out to a couple of different firms, which were few at the time, but just kind of reached out to some people who were interested in hiring for that type of position, and was actually presented with 4 different job offers, but they were all on the coast. And so for me, it meant I had to move to get a job like this. So I ended up working out a deal with a company in New York that allowed me to work remotely. And through that time, they also allowed me to do other work, freelancing, which is where I found Upwork. And so through Upwork and finding some clients through there for this technology, I've kind of learned a lot.
Hey Brad, quick question. That's thank you for that, and excited to learn some more. It sounds like some of the stuff that Eric Gregg mentioned around location and access to opportunities is really one of the drivers that kind of got you into freelancing. Were there any other types of things like that you felt like kind of moved you from the corporate America strategy to freelancing? It sounded like access to new skills and location were a big part of that. But can you talk a little bit more about why you started freelancing too?
Yeah, definitely. That was a huge part of it for me was location and just this type of job you can't find or couldn't find a few years ago, and it's still really hard to find in the Midwest. And so that was definitely a huge factor of mine to kind of start this freelancing pursuit. But another one is just being able to, when you're a freelancer, you're a business owner. It's really you have a lot of benefits from that as well, being able to choose the projects that you're working on, and that also goes into what Eric was talking about learning new skills. So being able to spend time learning the new things that you see kind of coming into the industries and how they can be used. And there's a lot of flexibility on your working hours, which is fabulous because when you're working with people from around the world and time changes and zones, it helps to be able to kind of change your schedule accordingly. So that's why freelancing was really appealing to me.
That's great. You mentioned, working with a number of clients. Could you share maybe some of the cool things that you've been able to learn or experience, working with companies on Upwork?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of really great projects to come from Upwork. A couple of clients that I've gotten to work with are Canvas Technology. They develop autonomous drones for warehouses in Denver, and then Best Buy. We've been able to develop some virtual reality applications for Best Buy. And then Golden Edibles is another company that it actually is in for they make chocolate covered fruits. So you really get a wide variety of projects and industries of what we can do. So I've gotten jobs off Upwork that all for XR, which is extended realities, which basically just encompasses virtual reality, augmented reality, cinematic reality, mixed reality. But those jobs, they range from all the different industries, from e-commerce to training to architecture and to marketing. So there's a lot of different opportunities that you get.
That's great. Thank you for sharing the examples. One of the things that we hear from customers, and so when we're talking to hiring managers at enterprise organizations, hiring's hard on Upwork. I mean, if you've never used the technology, if you've never used freelancers through a platform, there's a learning curve, I assume, on both sides. And so any tips that you can share with the hiring managers that are on the call of like best ways to work with, top talent like yourself, and just some key takeaways that you've learned with these different companies? Like, what's the best way, and some good ideas of how to engage with folks like you?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think a lot of people, as the freelancing industry grows, like Eric was talking about, I think there will be more and more tools developed that will help us with this. But yeah, there are a lot of things that we can be doing proactively right now to kind of help ease that relationship. And what I've found that helps on the freelancer side, speaking to the hiring managers here, is what's really important when you're looking for a freelancer is that they're using tools also that are going to help this relationship. Not necessarily just that they know the technology that you're hiring for, but also that they're using organization tools like Trello, where they can show you their progress, and they're sending you screenshots and updates and emails every week. And just I think from the hiring manager side, what helps for a freelancer to know that this is a job that they can do is coming with as clear expectations as you can, and very clearly communicating the time and the quality and the budget that is allowed for this specific project. And I think with just a few of those tools, you'll be able to realize if the freelancer one has a proven set of skills through their portfolio, but two, also just having that trust with them, I think is a very key factor in hiring managers and freelancers relationships, because without that trust, either the freelancer is going to get annoyed with all the requests, then they're not going to be able to get you the things that you need, or you're going to get annoyed because they haven't responded to you on a timely basis. So I think trust is a very key factor, and then using the technology that is offered today to kind of ease that relationship.
That's a great example. I mean, that's, some of the, kind of, feed forward we provide all of our customers are having clear, concise kind of objectives of what you need done. that you can communicate with your freelance partners as a part of it. So I'm an active user of the platform as well, and so I've learned the more exact that I can be and what I'm trying to do, the better I think that the freelancers experience me as well. And so thank you for that. One of the things that Eric Gregg touched on was that there's this misperception around freelancing, that people freelance because it's a bridge to full-time, or their skills aren't in demand and they don't have other solutions, and it's like their plan B. And it sounds like for you it became a plan A. Like how would you describe what you do and against some of those perceptions of freelancing, to both your friends, your colleagues, as well as potential customers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the perception for friends of mine, I think just being in the younger age, I'm 28 years old, so I think everybody kind of sees this as a dream job. So it's a little different than the perceptions that I heard from Eric. But I do understand where he's coming from, and I think that those perceptions, for me, this is plan A, and like you said, and I think where that comes from is the jobs that I'm receiving from Upwork are actually more for very highly sought upon skill sets and things that people don't necessarily have yet, or it's research and development. And so it kind of gives me a lot of opportunity to learn these new things and then to show kind of these new skill sets. So it became plan A for me because the companies that required this work were open to kind of exploring these new opportunities with me. So kind of to combat upon that, I think it's kind of like Eric also mentioned, is it's just hard to find this these talents that haven't been developed throughout college and their new technologies. So it's become an option A for me.
Awesome. Play this out for us. So like if you in 3 years, like how do you see this helping you build your business?
Yeah. I mean, that is exactly what freelancing is for me. It's not a bridge to a new job. It is kind of just developing a business around myself for these technologies, these XR technologies. So what I would like to see in 3 years, as AR and VR continue to grow, it's projected to grow a lot. That's probably an understatement, but by 2020 or 2025, it's supposed to be a very, very large industry. So right now I'm spending a lot of time with companies in their, like I said, in their R&D platforms and developing proof of concepts. So in the next 3 years, I hope to have really helped these companies develop their standards in their workflow around this technology, and then being able to support them and being able to always increase their technology as it increases. And so I also, plan on starting my own business that I can bring people into and utilize Upwork and utilize the skill or the abilities that come from that with planning projects through it and working through the financials through it, and just bringing people into that platform so that I can kind of build this structure.
That is great, and in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that the idea of building your business on Upwork. I mean, what we see is as freelancers build successful businesses on the platform, they get access to new projects that are interesting, that require different skills, and so we do see freelancers team up over time and build their own freelance agencies on Upwork, so that they're growing their business but solving even larger projects with more diverse skills for their customers. And so thank you very much for sharing your insight with the audience today. Congratulations on all the success that you've had freelancing, and if you hang on for a little bit, we're going to go to questions here in a second before I wrap up. So if you haven't asked a question, as a reminder, if you have a question for myself or for Brad, just to type those in on the question tabs within the GoToWebinar platform, and we'll make sure and exit those. And so thank you, Brad. So in summary, as we kind of wrap up some of the themes that we talked about today, there's some key things that we saw. One is that we have reached this tipping point of large enterprises are adding new capabilities as a part of their talent strategy. It's not an or strategy. I mean, they have full-time employees, they have traditional temporary labor type contracts. They've got BPO, they've got outsourcing. Companies are going to fill jobs in a lot of different ways. Freelancing is just another capability you can build for your organization, and we're starting to see it happen at scale in marketplaces like Upwork. The second one is which is not, I don't think, a shocker to anyone on the phone, that it's obviously getting increasingly hard to find talent, and it's being multiplied by the rate of increase of the new technologies that continue to hit the marketplace. We see that obviously very live in our marketplace with the quarterly skills that continue to pop up quarter over quarter. And if you think about things like technology, some of the skills that Brad is working on around augmented reality, things like artificial intelligence, and even the XR skill that he's been building, those skills are available in these freelance marketplaces. Where you might not necessarily have headcount to add a full-time R&D person to your team, but you can go partner with experts like Brad to learn about new industries and how that could affect your customers and your solutions as you scale. And so we're really at the bleeding edge of skills that are in demand for companies all around the world. And so as a reminder, I see a few questions that have popped up here, but as a reminder, if you do have questions, if you just submit those in the question tab, we'll knock some of those out. So I've got one here first. It says, can you talk about how you see Upwork using customer service? What does that look like? What type of things do companies use it for? I think it's a great use case for us, and both internal and external customer service. We see companies that leverage contact center or call center type skills for internal services like their help desk, for internal shared services around things within HR and access to benefits. Like there's people that are on demand that you can train on your tools internally that can be available 24/7 because we have freelancers around the world that can provide not only internal support, but we also see it on the rise of customer service. So think about organizations that they don't necessarily know the volume, and it continues to have kind of seasonal or peak times of demand, and so it's hard to staff for that consistently all the time, and that's hard to budget for. So providing third-party customer service agents that can be trained on your tools that can provide 24/7 support for your businesses, both internal or specific customers, is a really growing trend where you provide access to your teams, via Upwork Enterprise, where we can provision access to your tools so that they can man the terminal in a remote way. We see it both internally as well as things on the customer side. So one of the questions that we have here is around, we have two actually, one around info security and then another one regarding worker classification. And so security is important for all organizations. And obviously this is something that we've had to solve for anytime we work with a third-party organization. And so one of the things that Upwork has done within our enterprise solution is provide an onboarding tool where you're actually able to kind of clearly set up the steps that you need a freelancer to complete. So things maybe like a non-disclosure agreement. Maybe it's provisioning access to a specific tool. Could be a background check. It could be an amendment to your independent contractor agreement. It could be a specific statement of work. What we've been able to do in the tool is allow you to replicate that entire process, so the work actually doesn't happen until the onboarding process has been complete. So you can hire with confidence, knowing that they've been able to replicate whatever governance or internal security guidelines that you have. The other question was regarding worker classification, and so obviously, this is important globally. Another good benefit of Upwork Enterprise is the fact that we provide compliance services for our customers, where we have experts as well as technology that allows us to vet and classify every engagement that you have as a customer, either as a 1099 or a W-2, as well as providing indemnification as a part of it, which is a premium service that's available within our platform. And that looks like about all the questions that we have. As a reminder, we have recorded the information today. Will be available via email to all of the attendees. We appreciate your time and support today, and hopefully we can be a trusted resource for you as you continue to engage in the future of work. So thank you and have a good day.